Hello, today's lecture will be dedicated to the very significant and comprehensive topic of self-remembering. Many years ago, on a cold winter evening, I once stumbled upon a thick, dusty book in a quaint little bookstore located in the heart of Moscow. The cover was a deep, rich blue, adorned with shimmering stars and the vast, expansive sky, and it was titled Self-Remembering by the renowned author Irk Burton. Well, I grabbed it to read. I must say that before this, I already had a lot of practical experience with self-remembering. And it was indeed very interesting to see what kind of fascinating experience the American Fourth Way practitioner Irk Burton would present. Italy, I think that it just won't be. You understand? You understand that a lot is written in the letter of words, sentences, and there is almost no meaning or significance in the text. There are some quotes from Uspensky, something from Gurdjieff, but the practical experience of self-remembering is not felt there in any way at all. Why? Now let's talk about what self-remembering is in practice. According to what Gurdjieff says, in essence, a person is, indeed, essentially. The core of a person is their essence, an informational entity that migrates from body to body, from century to century, from millennium to millennium, and perhaps even across millions of years. We do not know this, but it is actually in essence, fundamentally, indeed, truly, really, essentially, basically a human being. Christianity calls this the soul, within which, as understood, there is the spirit, which is the essence of the soul, and the soul as an informational shell between the spirit and the body. Whom did Gurdjieff call to remember? This is his important central method in the Fourth Way. Gurdjieff suggested the practice of remembering oneself, which means to be aware of one's own existence and presence, but not the self from the multiplicity that is currently present. Rather, the inner self that appeared as soon as we began to be aware of ourselves in this life. This inner self is the core essence of our being, which emerged as soon as we developed the element of what we call self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is the awareness of our own existence, the recognition of our thoughts and feelings, and the understanding of our individuality. It includes the awareness of our body, our mind, and the awareness of what we call ourselves, our identity, and our place in the world. Here we need to delve deeper because, of course, we have an abundance of these multiple eyes. Indeed, we have thousands, tens of thousands of eyes and many more. Which eye exactly should be remembered exactly? And here we need to return to the origins, namely to return to that self-awareness, which is crucial for our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. As soon as we began to feel and perceive this world, we were like the starting point of perceiving the world and the body, which is an essential aspect of our existence and consciousness. And this initial starting point has been carefully preserved by some individuals, while others unfortunately have not retained it. But it was precisely that deep feeling of oneself as an essence, oneself as a spirit in essence. Then it got blurred and was lost for various reasons, including but not limited to, and became indistinct and unclear. No one indeed taught us how to maintain this self-remembering, this awareness of ourselves. Not oneself as a body, but oneself as someone indeed in the body, the rulers of this body. But besides the body, there is also the mind. But we understand that, as we know, the mind is not I, it is in fact a tool, indeed. The mind can indeed be set to think about any topic or to reason about any topic. But on the other hand, we also know one more thing, that behind the mind there is some kind of puppeteer, who is the one that pulls his strings and leads him in every way possible. This is called desire, which is often driven by emotion and strong feelings. And this one, who indeed controls desires and emotions, he is also truly ready to call I myself in every sense. But there were moments, and there are moments in a person's life, moments that are significant and impactful, when they really want something deeply and passionately, but they come to the realization and understanding that they absolutely cannot have it, no matter how much they desire it or how hard they try. In other words, in essence, basically, essentially, to put it simply, someone wants to control this, and Gurdjieff insisted precisely on this, that a person should begin to become aware of themselves, first in what they can, in sincere self-awareness, which means being honest and truthful about one's own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Then, in this group setting, they should still strive to find that thin, small, objective source, which is the governing one, the true essence that guides and influences their behavior and decisions. This process involves deep introspection and a commitment to understanding the underlying principles that govern one's actions and interactions within the group. At a certain point in time, this particular manager will eventually activate or initiate something, which, as you can imagine, is definitely not an easy task to accomplish by any means. Of course, it is a rare moment. Why? Because there are millions of obstacles. In the lectures, we talked about these obstacles. First and foremost, it is our internal program of parasites in the emotional center, which consumes the energy of the emotional center, our energy bank. And there is little energy left for the higher levels of consciousness, the various intellectual parts of the centers, and sometimes, unfortunately, there is none at all. And for the opening of higher centers, more energy is needed, and that is also lacking. But there are critical situations when the emotional center, in order to survive, is forced to throw out energy reserves. And then, in fact, a person begins to operate at a level that is usually not typical for them. Indeed, their higher centers get activated. As a rule, this is a situation of extreme danger where, as people describe, time stood still. I started moving so fast, and managed to avoid this danger by doing everything necessary. Or some special mechanisms were activated that allowed predicting the development of the situation, foreseeing the course of events, and thus avoiding certain potentially unfavorable situations or circumstances. As I have already mentioned before, this particular incident occurred to me when I was in the process of sliding down into what seemed like an endless abyss. At that very moment, some kind of internal mechanism within me suddenly kicked in and activated. This special and unique mechanism, which we refer to as the I am, is what ultimately saved me from the perilous situation. One must remember oneself as the spirit, as the one who governs, first and foremost, the body. The body works as I have told it. I am its ruler, I am its master. I express thoughts in exact correlation with what I intend to convey with precision and clarity. In this case, the topic is self-remembering, and I ensure that my message is understood as intended. The focus of this discussion is on the concept of self-remembering, and the emotions are right here, in this presence of mine, right now. Emotions must strictly support my performance, my conversation, and overall they must do so effectively. They are collected, they do not get distracted, they provide the necessary energy to the centers. Well, to put it in more understandable terms of modern technology, you could say there is a computer that controls the mechanism. Here it is, the body mechanism, the biomechanism. Programs and centers that provide the computer with power, the emotional center, and various blocks that perform certain logical operations, allowing different behavior programs to unfold. These include various components such as those that are essential for the functioning of the computer and are crucial for its operations. And behind all these programs, behind all these mechanisms, There is one single entity that must monitor and manage it all, and ultimately and effectively. But the trouble is that in fact we were never really taught to actually and effectively manage ourselves. To be more precise, the manner in which this teaching was delivered was incredibly crude, utterly foolish, and completely senseless. The instructor not only yelled at the students, but also, on occasion, attempted to explain things, albeit in a very confusing and ineffective manner. At school, they gave out failing grades, 0s and 1s, which were very disappointing and unexpected. And they kept saying, study, study, sit. The child didn't know how to sit, how to study. He had energy. He was called to run outside, to chat with someone, to do something interesting, rather than doing this thing that he's being forced to do. They say, study, study, memorize, memorize. Moreover, in the educational environment of school, they primarily focus on teaching students through memorization techniques, thereby heavily loading the memory with information. Someone who has thoroughly loaded and prepared well, but does not take the time to teach and explain what is commonly referred to as understanding. And when a person doesn't understand, it just turns into a memory load for them, a meaningless, stupid memory load. People don't like stupid things. They simply obey because they are absolutely forced to, but they do not love it all. If a person clearly understands something, they will gladly and completely take it in. This is something useful and valuable. Let's say I'm being forced to learn some mathematics. Processes of addition, division, multiplication. Why is that? It's unclear. So how does it happen? Why everything? Here's some kind of abstraction, but it makes you think. He says, will you get a steak? Are we going to scold? And Vasca says to me, come on, I'll actually demonstrate to you how to really make slingshots, Well, slingshots are really fascinating. You can shoot with them, you can move around. It's quite fun and very great. I run to make a slingshot, choose the appropriate branch, clean it, make the necessary notches, get the rubber band, wrap it, take something else needed for the slingshot, and there it is, the slingshot. Cool, a pebble, wow, and click, awesome, I remembered all of it. Why? Because it's mine, it's interesting, it works. Mathematics is uninteresting, but they tell me to pull myself together. I don't know how to do that. I'm really trying, not actually knowing how to do it. My dad and mom always tell me to focus. I try, but I keep getting distracted. Look, my beloved cat just ran by. How wonderful, he's wagging his tail. Something clicked. They turned on the TV. All of this is distracting. But it is really difficult for me to be whole and very focused on this particular subject of study. Indeed, I don't know how to do it. No one taught me. And this is perhaps the essence of self-remembering, the one who controls their beam of attention. And the beam of attention is created in the emotional parts of the centers, in the emotional center. Imagine this as a bank, such as a bank of emotions, for instance. Bank, in this case, an energy bank. This bank distributes energy in accordance with some special intention of its own. The beam of attention. But we are not trained to control the beam of attention, which is the main tool of our consciousness. Whoever controls attention indeed controls everything in the organism. But where exactly does this particular beam of attention begin from? And how does it start? And where does it originate from? Where exactly is that tiny grain from which everything exactly originates exactly? This tiny particle is our essence, our I, the real I, the objective I. When we learn to manage attention, by understanding the underlying principles and techniques, we control the entire process of forming better attention and applying them consistently in our daily lives, and are compelled to be aware of the one who in fact controls, who indeed directs, that is, essentially oneself in reality. That is, in essence, the development and formation is indeed just the beginning of self-awareness, self-remembering. What exactly then is will? There are many definitions in the field of psychology, but ours is simple, clear, and concise, and easy to understand. It is a meticulously crafted and well-formed beam of focused attention, which is fundamentally built and established on the practice of self-remembering and self-awareness. The stronger this light beam is, in essence, think of it like a flashlight. The farther it shines and illuminates everything around it, the stronger its shine becomes. But the formation of such a beam of attention indeed requires work, just like everything else in our organism, in fact. It is necessary to learn to remember oneself in order to first be the master of this mechanism, this mind, these emotions, and understand and control and manage, to be the master of what is said, of oneself. Although one must always separate oneself from the one who controls this self. Body, mind, emotions. I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the emotions. Yogis have a practice, a mantra, not this, not this, not this, in their daily routine. Not this, not this, not this. In this way, the yogi completely eliminates all elements that are not essentially him in any way. That is, indeed, it is not you, not that actually I am not the body. You can take away the arms, legs, anything from the body, but such things are still not me. The mind. The mind can also be in different states, but it is not me. This is a mechanism, a computer that I control. Emotions are also difficult, but they can be managed, and that is not me. One must always separate the subject of control, which is managed by certain constructs within oneself, and of course, externally. But it is essential to distinguish between these two elements. If this is definitely combined into a single whole, there will be no control. When we say, I am the body, I am the mind, I am the emotions, all control is lost. A body cannot control another body by definition. The mind, well, some programs can control something there, but that's not really control. It's more like a kind of chaos. As for emotions, I won't even mention them. Managing them is extremely difficult. Therefore, the first thing done in the process of self-remembering is to separate the I that is being responsible for governing from the objects of governance. It is crucial that everything must be distributed properly to ensure fairness and efficiency in the allocation process. An action is an action when there is feedback, the result of that action. In self-remembering, the result is extremely important. While the result is indeed in self-remembering, it is actually an increase in the degree of control over something we have never tried to control before. If Gurdjieff constantly gave such exercises to students, he taught them complex motor exercises where they had to strictly and seriously control two different movements, to manage two different movements. That is, in fact, he took complete control of the motor center that governed the entire body. After that, he taught tasks of different levels for the intellectual center. Suppose at one moment you are counting, and at another moment, at the same moment, actually doing some exercise, for example, moving something around, different things, which required serious disidentification from these mechanisms and the feeling that you are in control of them, in a very deliberate and conscious manner, and with a heightened sense of awareness. He had very special, serious, and extremely important exercises for managing emotions. For example, the students describe. Here they are in Fontainebleau. They dug some kind of canal necessary for water drainage, and are sitting contentedly, looking at the nice little canal they have dug. Gurdjieff approaches slowly and says, "Wonderful, now everyone, please everyone, go back to sleep." The turmoil of emotions for digging a canal is not easy. All these efforts, all this work inside, between the emotions of joy and the necessity of fulfilling the teacher's tasks, there arose a conflict. And indeed, someone had to overcome this collision. In fact, a child learns in childhood. He really wants something sweet, and he shouts, "I want, I want, I want." But they tell him, "No, no, learn to overcome your I want." This ability to indeed overcome one's emotions of want and don't want, there are truly many of them, various indeed. This is the important and beneficial exercise necessary for your overall well-being and mindfulness, for self-remembering. Throughout my life, I have gained a considerable amount of experience and practice in various aspects and domains. This extensive practice has been crucial for my personal and professional development, allowing me to grow and learn continuously. But I noticed that it is extremely crucial to be able to successfully overcome what I called getting stuck or fixated on something interesting or captivating. And I started to carefully track these stuck moments. I see there's some interesting show on TV, something that caught my attention. I realized this is a moment of identification, sticking. I lose all attachment to myself completely in this process of watching and observing. I am becoming an automaton, in a way that feels almost mechanical and devoid of emotion. And here I made efforts, turned around with great effort, and left. At first it was very difficult and unpleasant, but then it became more and more easier and easier. And then arcade machines appeared, where it was interesting and exciting and thrilling, where you could win something, and most importantly, it was unusual. It was the early 90s. I approached such an arcade machine and tried to play, and it worked. And suddenly I really felt the same thing, that I was actually starting to want it. I was getting stuck in this process. And these are the developed skills. Previously, the ability to disidentify worked within me here. I turned and left, although it wasn't as simple as I make it sound. Then again, passing by those arcade machines, I would stop, go to them, at least to look, at least. In other words, justifications were coming, and I felt myself getting stuck again. But I managed to break free from these stuck states, and my good friend, the journalist Aneshka, who was always fascinated by new things, got so hooked on it that she sold her apartment, which she had lived in for years, and spent all the money she had on these addictive slot machines. She couldn't do anything about it, no matter how hard she tried. Just like any card players, he sometimes loses his states in the game as well. You see, self-remembering indeed plays a crucial key role in a person's life. If a person can remember themselves, in essence separate from their wants and don't wants, they can essentially control their life, in their life. If he does not know how to do this in any way, he is a slave to chance. Life does whatever it wants with him, in any way. Therefore, in essence, the ability to separate oneself from one's significance is important for self-development and ultimately in one's journey towards personal growth. Those who can do this are certainly able to develop. Why do I say this? Because development is, above all, dedicated effort on oneself. These are constant and systematic efforts. This is what we call discipline. So this conscious discipline is essentially the process of working with want, don't want, in other words. As long as a person has other wants and don't wants, besides working on themselves, besides developing their attention and other processes, they cannot control themselves. They cannot develop. He needs to consciously sit himself down and make those parts of us from which we have branched off work to do what they must for developing the skills of self-control, particularly self-remembering. Self-remembering is indeed especially significant in particularly disrupting processes that are referred to as negative emotions. We get stuck in them, becoming either aggression, fury, or on the contrary, gloominess and sorrow, despondency, and we can't break free from these want-don't-want states. Self-remembering helps to regain control and perspective. But the one who remembers themselves tracks this moment, in this very moment, and they clearly understand that at this moment they have fallen into attachment, into negative emotions. The next moment, when he indeed finds himself caught in the same negative emotion, he truly makes an effort to really sober up. And after a few such self-observations, it becomes simpler and easier. And then he will extend this experience to other negative emotions, such as sadness and anger. And he will definitely, undoubtedly, feel a certain kind of joy of success and satisfaction. This joy of success, satisfaction, and fulfillment is the positive feedback that will further reinforce his intentions to control these mechanisms. This is the path of development in this journey. Always remember yourself, and do not identify with your internal mechanisms and yourself. Ultimately, when a person remembers themselves well, they feel themselves in the body, in the mind, in the emotions. They are fully aware that they are not the body, not the mind, not the emotions. And this awareness gradually begins to penetrate deeper and deeper layers of his consciousness, more and more. Even when a person is asleep, they can in fact actually be aware that they are indeed sleeping, that a movie is playing. This is actually a form of lucid dreaming, and in fact to control this movie. But there is a state much deeper than sleep, a meditative state where higher centers are activated. And the higher centers require excellent self-monitoring, self-management, and most importantly, the management of the lower centers so that they do not activate and interfere with the work of the higher centers. Therefore, self-remembering is the central axis around which everything else in the process of human development is built, in the process of human development. That's why Gurdjieff indeed insisted so much on self-remembering a lot, Therefore, various elements were involved here, including elements like alarms, group work, and conscious efforts, and other factors. Moreover, Gurdjieff said, and this is absolutely extremely important, that only super efforts indeed count. That is to say, when the emotional center of the brain released a powerful and mighty energy to overcome a particular challenge or obstacle, and this event was firmly fixed in the brain as a certain setting or configuration, it created a lasting impact. This powerful release of energy and its subsequent fixation in the brain's settings is a significant phenomenon. A big thank you for your attention and for taking the time to understand this intricate process.